everybody, and welcome to this brand new video with a brand new me, a healthier me. I've been sick the last week and I haven't spoken a lot, so if my voice is cracking in between, that's why. But today we have something very, very exciting planned. We have ACOTAR. First up, if you see this beautiful, beautiful edition of my ACOTAR books, these are the A Touch of Magic dust jackets. I have them for all of ACOTAR and all of Throne of Glass, and I'm really, really happy with them. So they do restocks, like, I don't know, like maybe twice a year, 3 times a year. This is also not sponsored. I just love these dust jackets so much. They're so pretty, and they have like little designs on the inside as well, and they're just gorgeous. But today we're going to be going through this book in detail. This is for you if you want to read the second book and you don't remember the first one as well. This is just a recap of what's going to happen. If you want to reread all of the books, but you, for some reason that I actually understand very well, you don't want to reread this book. I can hear the crickets. We're just getting straight into this one. I'm going to talk you through the major events, I would say, because for some reason, in the first, 3/4 of this book, nothing really important happens. Like, there are no big life-changing events, and then the whole important plot is packed into the last 100 pages. And I think that is a reoccurring theme with all of Sarah J. Maas's books. The beginning is very slow, the beginning is very hard to get through, and then once you're very much deep into the book, you get everything packed into the last few chapters, and there's something and upon something and then something again, and it's a lot. So we're going to go through these. This has spoilers of just this book. I am not going to put any spoilers for the further books until the very end, but I'm going to tell you when those spoilers will start, so that if you have not read A Court of Mist and Fury yet, which you should, it's a lot better than this one, you can just watch this and then shut it off once the spoilers come, but I'm going to tell you again. And I think with that, I've said everything that I wanted to say, and we can go straight into all of the things that happen in A Court of Thorns and Roses. Oh, by the way, I wanted to show you this. I got a new plant. This is Bob. Just because all my plants are called Bob. Because I cannot remember names that I give to my plants, so they're all called Bob. And I hope that you enjoy this video together with Bob. I'm just gonna put him back where he belongs. Also, if you can tell by my earring choice, and okay, this is the necklace I always wear, and I'm recently just obsessed with these earrings, even though I can't wear them a lot because I'm allergic to basically everything. But I've gone for a spring court meets night court sort of vibe today, because I'm just I don't have any clothing that would fit the night court. I would say I am a spring court kind of girly, but I love the night court and I love stars. So I am always wearing star necklace, star earrings, star everything, but I don't have star outfits. Anyway, let's get into these plots. I'm not entirely sure how this is going to go. I have the entire plot on my iPad. Like, I made notes on every single chapter, but I don't think I'm going to go chapter-wise, because there are chapters where I literally just have one word because nothing is happening. So again, as where I'm standing in this, I have read the entire series. I've read every single Sarah J. Maas book except for the Catwoman one, because honestly, no. I'm going into this with the knowledge of all the books, but I'm trying to be Switzerland. You know, I'm trying not to put any information out there that you cannot get with these books. So with that, I'm going to just sort this into tiny little fragments and try and explain the plot of ACOTAR to all of you to just catch you up on things. Does that make sense? I hope it does. Okay, so the first part, the first fragment of this book, is what I would call the human lands. I'm just making up little titles for the different things because I think it's fun. So, in the first part of the book, we meet Feyre, who is hunting in the forest. Now, the first page of this book is honestly very 2014 teenage book. That's just everything it is. She starts in the forest with her bow and arrow in the snow. It just symbolizes how lonely she is, and I really like the vibe that it gives off in the beginning. I am sweating like a pig, by the way. It's so warm. But at least I have my medication so I don't get spotty. If I do, don't be alarmed. I'm just allergic to my own sweat. Feyre is hunting in the woods and she sees a deer. Now, her family is completely starved and she knows that she has to get this deer for her family, right? So when a wolf comes along, she's like, shit, this could either be a fairy or an actual wolf. Either way, it's gonna kill me or the deer, and if it kills the deer, then we don't have any food, so we're dead anyway. So she decides to grab her best arrow that she has, the ashwood arrow, that could kill a fairy, and she kills the wolf. She then gathers all of the animals, she gathers the deer and the wolf, takes the hide, and then goes straight home where we meet her family. That's Elaine and Nesta, her two sisters, and her dad. And we also get to know that she has sort of like a friends with benefits situation with a certain Isaac Hale. I completely forgot that Isaac Hale was a character in these books. I don't know why he's here. I don't know what sort of situation is going on with him. But he is mentioned exactly 3 times in this whole book, and that's it. So this is the only time that I'm going to mention him as well because he is not important. We also find out that Feyre is the youngest and she's the one that's been going out hunting all the time, and that she's basically the one that's caring for her family because that is what her mother told her when she died. So we sort of have this Cinderella situation where it's like, be kind to everybody and do your stuff, and that's like the dying wish of the mother. And then we sort of learn that fairies are actually the bad people that live on the other side of the wall. After that, she goes to this market sort of situation to generally just sell the stuff that she hunted for cloaks, for all the stuff that she might need and that her family needs to survive. She meets this mercenary of the Fae that tells her a little bit more about the fairyland, which is Prythian. So Prythian is the country of the fairies, the land of the fairies, that is sectioned into the different courts, which is also something that you can see on the map. I'm going to just put the map right here for a second so that you can see the map. And that is the end of like the first part, as I would call it. The second part is something that I would call the journey to the fairyland, because that is when Tamlin knocks at her door. But he doesn't really knock at the door. He knocks the door down as in his beast form, and he says that Feyre killed a wolf, and for that she has to trade her own life, because she took a fairy life, so she has to basically die. And he says the only way that she will not die is if she accompanies him to his fairylands. Now, we don't know who Tamlin is at this point, we just think he's a random high fairy. And then he just grabs her, puts her on a horse, knocks her out, and the next thing we know, we are at the Spring Court, which is the next chapter. We learn a little bit more about Tamlin. We know that what he looks like, that he's blonde with his green eyes and his... honestly, I forgot that he was wearing a mask. I'm not really a person who imagines people a lot when I read. It just happens in my head. My head is a weird place. I think I see pictures, but then again I don't see pictures. Does that make sense? It doesn't make sense. But I completely forgot that him and Lucien both wore masks. Then again, Lucien, we're meeting him for the first time with his fox mask, and they're like dressing her up. And then my only thing that I wrote for like the next chapter was, I strongly dislike Tamlin. We have the classic compliment, wow, your hair is clean, which is, I know, it's the best compliment you can ever get. I'm already a little biased. Anyway, we are learning about this 50-year-old sickness that's plaguing all of Prythian, and especially the spring court, which is where everybody has to wear masks. And we're not talking like the medicinal mask, but the like carnival masks, I would say. After that, Lucien and Feyre go out for a ride because she doesn't want to be bunched up in her room all the time, which is understandable. Feyre finds out a little more about the curse. They meet different woodly creatures that are very, very dangerous, and that Tamlin just destroys. He shreds them to pieces. There are things here that I've written down that are not really important. Like, for example, Feyre has a dream of killing a fae. Like, is that really important? Does that bring anybody further? I don't think it does. But then we have a scene where Tamlin is hurt because he killed one of the monsters in the woods. He killed the boogie. We don't know what it's called, actually. We just know how it's written. Bogge. Well, he killed that, and now he's hurt, and he has, like, scratches, and Feyre patches him up. He then learns that Feyre cannot write, so she's never learned how to read and write, so Tamlin offers to teach her how to read, and in that he, like, sort of tells her the story of Prythian, how it came together, how the cauldron is like the source of all living. Then Lucien gives her advice on how to capture Azuriel, because she has so many questions and nobody's going to answer them for her, mostly because they're all cursed. But at this point we don't know that they're all cursed and they can't talk about it. So he says, okay, you know what, you can capture this Zuriel kind of creature and he will tell you everything. That is exactly what she does. She captures the Zuriel, and the Zuriel is the tea. He spills the tea, and he says, stay with your High Lord, and everything will be okay. He tells Feyre that Tamlin's the High Lord of the Spring Court, and then he says, stay with your High Lord, and everything will be okay. I'm just gonna leave it at that. Okay? I'm so bad at this. I'm so bad at this. Why can I not be, like, neutral about this? Because I'm too invested in the whole story to be neutral about the whole stay with your High Lord thing. But if you know, you know, and if you don't know, you're gonna find out. And that's all I'm gonna say about this. We also learn about the King of Hybern, who lives, like, across the sea, and who is basically the Wicked King. That is one of the titles from The Cruel Prince, right? Yeah, the Wicked King. Cruel Prince, Wicked King, Queen of Nothing. That was completely beside the topic. We also learn that Tamlin was a child 500 years ago. It's just, this is the classic fairy sort of situation, or like the vampire age gap thing, where you have a person that doesn't look old, but he's really old. And then you have like this human teenager, I think she just turned 19. You have this human teenage girl who's just there. And this teenage girl will save the world. Anyway, then the next morning they like go to like breakfast and they eat, and then there is a fairy that is dying on the kitchen table, like, and this fairy always says, like, she stole my wings, and then this is the first time that this she is mentioned, when we don't know who she is at this point, but we will learn later. And they try to heal him, but it fails, and this fairy dies, basically. Oh, Jesus Christ, there's so much happening that's also not happening, like, it's not important. We learn a little more about Lucien's backstory, how he fell in love with the girl, and then his father learned of that love, and she was then executed by his dad, the High Lord of the Autumn Court, and then three of his brothers came to kill him, like, to kill Lucien, and he killed two of his brothers and one of them remains. That's basically his backstory. After that, like, weeks pass, and, like, Feyre lives at the Spring Court. She starts to paint again because that's what she loves to do. Tamlin kisses her hand. That's, like, notes that I made. Like, this is so not really important to the story, but it is important to their romance, technically, so I will mention it. But I can say that without spoiling anybody. I'm not Team Tamlin, you guys, and I don't know if I know anybody who is Team Tamlin. That's too much of a spoiler. But I'm not a fan of Tamlin. Never was, never will be. We're moving on to the spring celebration, the Calanmai. I'm just going to call it Calanmai. I'm pretty sure that's what it's supposed to be. When the Calanmai arrives, Tamlin tells Feyre to stay locked up in her room because it's dangerous. So Feyre decides to not stay locked up, because why would you stay locked up when you could go exploring during a very dangerous event? So she goes outside where she gets attacked by 3 fae. And then she gets saved by a mysterious, dark-haired, violet-eyed person that we don't know the name of yet, but we will later find out that this is Reese. If you can't tell, we are obviously Team Reese here, and I hope that everybody out there is too, because this is Reese we're talking about. She learns about the rite, which is basically where Tamlin has to be with a female individual for one night to restore the spring court to its spring nature. So it basically is like the reborn version of it. And then Tamlin is really, really angry because he meets her when he's like not really himself outside of her room, and he's screaming at her and being like, "You don't disobey me!" And so he's really, really angry, and then he bites her in the neck. Yeah, I think that's all we have to say about that. My notes say Tamlin is being an asshole for no reason. I was really trying to be neutral about this, but I don't think I can be. But then he decides to apologize, which Feyre accepts, and then she dresses very fancy for dinner and pretends and flirts a lot, and then she shows Tamlin all her pictures. And then it is the first night that she learns to trust the Fae because she does not lock her door. And then a lot of other things happen. Tamlin gives her the ability to see magic, and then she finds a spiked head in the garden, which is apparently a gift from the Night Court. As a joke, sort of. After that, we have the summer solstice. We then have Feyre and Tamlin dancing after drinking some fairy wine, and we have them sharing their first kiss. You can already tell, I am so unemotional about this first kiss. Usually would be freaking out, but I'm not. And then we meet Rice again because he comes to visit the spring court as like a sort of, not really a corporal form, but sort of like a vision something. Well, he's there and he talks to Lucien and he talks to Tamlin, and they try to hide Feyre, but it doesn't really work. So Feyre gives Rhys a false name, and we figure out that Rhys is a very, very powerful High Lord. We just figured that out. And after that, Feyre is sent home to her family, and the last thing Tamlin says to her is that he loves her, and then he sends her away. So when she returns home, she figures out that her sisters were thinking that she was sent to like some rich aunt, and who has now died. And then her father's ships have been found, so their original riches have been returned, and they're not very poor anymore, and she doesn't have to worry about her family. We also figured out that when Feyre disappeared, Nesta was the only one who did not believe the story, and she went after Feyre and went up to the wall that separates the human and the fairy realm, and she was trying to figure out a way to get Feyre back. And then we have some cute sister bonding time where Feyre teaches Nestor how to paint. And then we also figure out that Claire Betters and her whole family is completely dead. They've been destroyed, which is concerning to her because this was the name that she gave Rhysand as like a false name. So somebody went ahead and killed them all. And since that happens, Feyre then tells her family to run as soon as any danger is there, and she goes back to the fairy realm in order to save the Spring Court. That's her mission. She goes back because she's like, okay, I can't leave it at that. Then when she returns, she learns of a curse that's on the Spring Court and on the whole, on all of Prythian. We figure out that the woman, the she, is Amarantha, who lives under the mountain and who has basically the power over all the High Lords. She used to be like a general from Highburn, and she just took all the power and cursed the entire land, basically. The only way to break this curse is if Tamlin had somebody fall in love with him, a human fall in love with him before the 50 years were over. Those 50 years ended a few weeks ago, the day before Tamlin sent her away. So she is determined to save the kingdom, save everybody, and tell Tamlin that she loves him, and save the fairies, basically. So she enters the cave under the mountain to face everybody. Now here's where it gets a little tricky. Under the mountain, she first meets the adder, who brings her like inside, and then she tells everybody that she wants to claim the one she loves, and that person is Tamlin. And Amarantha seems very amused by this, and she tells Feyre that the only way she could free everybody and free Tamlin, break the curse, was if she competed in 3 trials and she won all those 3 trials, then she would free Tamlin. That's the deal. And she also gives her like a riddle. I'm not going to cite the riddle because I don't think the riddle is actually that important. And then Feyre is completely, she's like hurt and everything, and then she's sent into the dungeons where Lucien finds her and heals her and tells her everything that's been going on a little bit. And then we get to the first trial. The first trial is, in my opinion, the hardest. No, it's not the hardest trial. The first trial is the most like challenging trial body-wise, because she has to fight a worm. Now, when I first read the book, I was like, a worm? Like an earthworm? It's not an earthworm. I think it's more like this kind of worm, like a worm, like a dragon worm. Makes more sense. Or like a big caterpillar. Something like this. That could destroy you, basically. It's not an earthworm. She is sent into this maze sort of situation with like half-open tunnels. She like runs away, and then she figures out that this worm is like blind, and then she basically builds a trap out of broken bones where she ends up killing this worm, which is not something that anybody thought it would happen. And then after that, she is completely like traumatized. Of course she's traumatized, and she's broken and she's hurt. She has an infection in her arm. And the person that comes and heals her is Rhys. He comes down into the dungeons where she is, and he heals her arm, and then he makes a deal with her in order to like heal her arm. He says that she will have to stay at the Night Court for 1 week every month. That's their deal. And then Feyre has some Cinderella-like chores, I would say, because she has to sweep the ground, but it doesn't work. It's magic, so it gets dirtier every time she like does something. And then the Lady of the Autumn Court, so Lucien's mother, comes along because Feyre, like earlier, Feyre saved Lucien's life by telling Amarantha her name. So she says, okay, this is my debt that I have to pay to you. So she helps her with the cleaning. She makes fancy water, basically. Then she has to pick lentils out of Rhys's fireplace, where he sort of meets her, and they have a little talk, and then Feyre has to accompany Rhys to a party every night, because every night there's a party, and every night he, like, dresses her in, like, very see-through clothing, and he paints her entire body in paint. The only thing he says is, I don't like my belongings being tampered with. This is about the same vibe as I protect my investments in, like, Six of Crows, which is a sentence that book people just love. Every night after these parties, Feyre wakes up and remembers nothing after drinking wine, and she only remembers slight bits of her, like, sitting on Rhys's lap and, like, dancing a little bit, but she doesn't remember a lot. We then, like, get to see how powerful Rhys actually is when there is a fairy of the Winter Court who tried to flee from under the mountain, and Rhys just crushes his brain. We also figure out that crushing his brain in this case is sort of like the easiest way to like kill this fairy so that he is not tortured. Which I don't know if this is like the best outcome, but it is what's happening. After that we have the second trial where Feyre has to answer a question that is written on the wall. When we remembered earlier, we learned that Feyre cannot read. So this turns out to be a very tricky challenge for her, but Rhys actually cheats and he tells her which lever to pull in order to answer the question correctly. After that, nothing really important happens until the night of the third trial, where we learn that this whole war is actually because Tamlin refuses to be Amarantha's lover. Now, when I read this the first time, I was so angry at Tamlin because I was just like, okay, you know what, this is just a small price to pay. But now that I've read it again, I'm like, this isn't Tamlin's fault that he doesn't want to be Amarantha's lover. Like, I wouldn't want to be her lover. Why should he have to be? So right now I feel a little bit sorry for him. But then we have a scene where Feyre finds Tamlin, and they kiss, they make out, only to be interrupted by Rhys, who then sends Tamlin away. Tells Feyre that she can't go around kissing Tamlin because if Amarantha knew, things would go like to hell. And then he kisses Feyre to like smear the body paint that she has on, because he's like, the body paint is smeared, and if it's not us kissing, then she's gonna think it's Tamlin, and then she's gonna freak out and kill everybody. So they do that, and then they're interrupted by Amarantha and Tamlin is really angry, so Rhys gets to just send Feyre back into her cell for the last night before her third trial. When the third trial comes, that is the most mentally challenging trial, because Feyre has to kill 3 innocent Fae, and they all have a bag above their head, and then when the bag is taken off, she has to kill them. And the first 2 are 2 fairies that they don't know, and they beg, and she figures out that they beg for her to kill her because everything else is going to be worse. Like, being captured for so long is horrible, and it's not going to get any better, so they beg for her to kill her. And then the third fairy that she has to kill is Tamlin, which she obviously hates, but she does it anyway. And with that, she has won this thing. So Amarantha then, like, slowly kills Feyre, and Rhys is the one who's fighting for her, who's screaming her name, who's trying to save her. But it doesn't work, and Feyre dies. Once Feyre dies, Tamlin completely freaks out, and we now see this out of Feyre's perspective, who is inside of Rhys's head. If that makes sense to you, it does. And so we see that Tamlin kills Amarantha, he rips out her throat, and then all of the High Lords give up a part of their soul to save Feyre's life. So they each, like, drop a little bit of their soul into her. Now I feel like this scene is very anticlimactic, even though it is a very, very important scene. It's just, like, mentioned on, like, 1 page, and it's really fast. I wish that there would have been a little more of a build-up, so I tried to figure out whose idea this was, and we don't really see it. The last chapter is basically just, like, the reunion of Feyre and Tamlin, as she is now a fairy, and then we have a very short snippet of Feyre saying goodbye to Rhys when he leaves for the Night Court, and then the book is just over. Now, I feel like the ending of this was very, very abrupt. So there was a lot of stuff that was really not important in the beginning of the book, and then there was a lot of stuff that was really important, and all of this information was packed into the last few chapters. Which I find a little annoying, because you could just, like, space it out a little more. There are some scenes that I feel like could be more important, but weren't made to be more important. And there are scenes in the Spring Court in the beginning that you just don't need. Scenes that I didn't even mention because they're not important to the storyline at all. They don't help at all. So yeah, that was A Court of Thorns and Roses, and now come my spoilers for anybody who's read the entire series. If you don't want to see the spoilers, you can skip to the end. Let's go. It was so hard reading this and pretending to like Tamlin. It was so hard being like, okay, I'm gonna go into this with an open mind. Why would I? I know what Tamlin does in the future. I know I don't like him. And every time I'm like, seeing Rhys, this is like me freaking out internally and externally, because I'm like, oh my gosh, he's here! The High Lord of the Night Court! Please, stay with your High Lord. Stay with Rhys, not Tamlin. We don't need Tamlin. I just had to get this off my chest really fast, because I think I'm gonna, like, continue the whole series and reading it, and as soon as I've read, like, as soon as I'm in the second book, I think I can speak about everything clearly, because this is just the biggest thing in this series, is that you don't like Tamlin if you've read the second book. It's just, you don't like him anymore, and I think that's okay. Okay, if you skipped the spoilers, welcome back. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it was entertaining, or, like, I hope you understood the book. I hope that I did a good job. I'm not sure. I'm probably all over the place. But I am really excited about reading the rest of this series now. Again, not that I've I've read it before. But either way, it's been a year almost. It's been more than a year since I've read these books. But I'm really excited to read them again. And I'm just gonna see you in the next video. And I hope you have a nice day. You pick up a book. You pick up maybe ACOTAR, or you pick up the next book in the series, or you pick up a completely different book. Either way, I'm gonna say goodbye. See ya! I almost forgot a book recommendation. We're going with The Serpent and the Wings of Night. Since this has a very, very similar vibe to the ACOTAR books, I think that if you enjoyed ACOTAR, or if you are planning to enjoy ACOTAR, you're gonna enjoy this series. This is also a lot less to read than reading all of the ACOTAR series, and it's a lot of fun. This is, however, vampires, but everything else is pretty similar. This is also like a Hunger Games vibe, and I really enjoyed this. This was very, very fun to read, and I hope that you decide to pick it up. Okay, goodbye now. I'll see you next time. Go read a book.